just be nice. That's such an important thing. People want to work with nice people. That ultimately, our band for the Doo Wop Project, we're going to travel. It's going to be tiring. We're going to spend 6 hours together in a car and 5 in a plane and think. We want to be with people that we want to hang out with.
Sonny, thank you so much for joining us. I've had the chance of hearing you perform with the Doo Wop group, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. Yeah. So great to hear. But you're involved in, my gosh, music directing and as a keyboard player, you're involved in many different things. I want to kind of step into that to hear your full scope of what you're doing. So thanks so much for joining us.
So glad to be here. Started out in the professional music world, subbing on keyboard books on Broadway. That led to conducting, which then led to more arranging and music directing and orchestrating, and that's sort of where I'm focusing more of my energy now, although I love playing and will always play. Yeah, just try to do as many jobs in my little niche that I can get to.
That diversity of the skill that you have really is needed now more than ever in the music industry. But let's just go back to the beginning as far as how you got involved with music and how did keyboard enter your life? So
music was always part of my life. My, my parents always played lots of records. My uncle was in a famous doo-wop group, really, called Johnny Maestro and the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yes, Johnny Maestro. I remember they were huge.
Huge. I mean, they had hit the worst that could happen, like right before my uncle got in the band. And he played keyboard and trumpet. I would see my uncle play with the band. I don't know that I was like, oh, I want to do that, but it was always around. We would go check him out. My grandparents had a organ at their house, and me and my sister would play around with it. We didn't know anything. But when I was, I think, 8 years old, on Christmas Eve, a knock on the door, and my grandparents were there, and in walked a piano. They bought it for us for Christmas. And they paid for our piano lessons, and we did it for many years. I practiced piano, but I was also involved in sports and everything else. So I got okay. I was never great, but I liked it enough. But then I kind of quit playing piano right around 12 years old when I met girls, I think, for the first time. And my mother knew that I really liked it, though, so she encouraged me to try lessons out with this other teacher, a guy we kind of knew around town. So I had the first lesson with him, and he taught me the 50s chord progression, like C, A minor, F, G. I went home and he wrote it down on manuscript paper, and I went home and I learned it. And I came back the next week and he said, oh, can you play it for me? And I did. And he said, oh, great. He got up, he had a little studio that he taught out of. He got up from the seat next to me and got behind a drum set and went 1, 2, 3, 4, and we started playing together. And that was it for me.
Game-changing moment.
Oh my God, yeah. Up until then, I'd been taking piano lessons. At that moment, I was making music for the first time. And so I got in the car and I said, Mom, I know what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I've never done anything else.
And that was it.
Yeah.
Who were you listening to at that time musically?
Interestingly, I grew up around when hip-hop music was becoming popular, and I was also a DJ at the time. So I had 2 turntables, and I would DJ my friends' parties and Sweet 16 parties and things, and I actually thought I was going to be going in that direction, but then piano sort of trumped that, and I did less of that and more playing piano. And but yeah, so I listened to a lot of hip-hop music, and but my uncle knew that I was serious about music or getting serious about music, so he brought me for Christmas one year a few jazz records, Bill Evans record and Two Thelonious Monk record. And the Bill Evans you could get into. I was like, oh, this is, I kind of like, I wanted to try to like it, but the Thelonious Monk, I was like,
it's deep stuff.
This is deep, and I couldn't stand it. It's funny because later on in life, I love Thelonious Monk, and it took me a long time to get back to there. But yeah, I got into jazz music through that, and my high school had a huge music program. It wasn't like a music and arts school, but I had 5 music classes in high school. And I had a jazz band and a jazz choir and a show choir, and I played a lot and everything, but our teachers were really into jazz, and then that's what I decided to study in school. I went to Berklee College of Music for a hot minute, and then City College up in Harlem, where Ron Carter was teaching stuff.
Absolutely.
So.
We had Ron Carter here, just
Oh,
a
great.
very, very deep individual. So going back to high school, that music program was probably very important for you to have who you met, other musicians that you met, music you were exposed to, because we're losing a lot of these school music programs now.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Yeah, it was so important. Our music teachers became our friends. You know, certainly for the serious musicians, they could tell who was like really into it, and they really took us under their wing. And they were musicians themselves. They played gigs, and they taught us about, oh, this is, you know, club date band. You're going to want to do this. Told us about Broadway, and it seemed like a viable career choice because they were teachers, but they were also players, and it was so important, and it breaks my heart to
see it declining. It really is a shame. So now are you working professionally now at this time? You're coming out of college at that time. Are you working and gigging and playing?
Well, so yeah, there was a theater in my town. Now I never thought I would do theater as a living, but there was a theater, and they always needed a piano player. So they and they paid money. You know, and so
That's a great motivator.
A great motivator. You know, other friends of mine working at McDonald's, and I didn't make a lot of money, but I made money playing piano, and we would do Broadway shows. It was a community theater, but they did a new show. They were always doing a show, and they always needed a piano player, and actually it wound up paving my journey in a big way, because before now I continued working there through college, and then I became the music director there and the conductor, the orchestras and everything, and I wound up doing 75 to 100 musicals, and it wound up being my training for what I wound up doing mostly in my career.
How great that fate opened the door for you.
That's right.
Beautiful. So music directing, what did that involve?
It involved then the same thing it involves now, which is, you know, I would teach the cast the music, teach the vocal parts. In that theater, I was also the music contractor. I would find the orchestra members.
Hire the musicians.
Hire the musicians. In a lot of cases there, it was volunteer. So we would maybe pay the drummer and the bass player, but then I would, you know, beg people to come and play. And it was a fun experience. But yeah, and then I would conduct the shows at night and play the piano. And that's all what I do today still. Yeah.
So you were doing all this here. So the learning of this, where do you think this came from? Because that's a lot of skills that you have to do at kind of the same time.
And now there are like music directing
courses.
Yeah. But certainly not when I was, you know, and you would try things, you would see what works and what doesn't work, and I would study conducting videos. I really love conducting.
Yeah.
I don't get to do a lot of classical orchestral conducting, but I do hope to. And so I would study Leonard Bernstein videos and Pierre Boulez and try to incorporate that into conducting the shows of this community theater.
Well, that's a beautiful direction for a lot of the viewers that are watching this, because you were pushing yourself into different areas to learn and grow, which is exactly what you needed to do.
Yeah, I mean, and all the while I was studying jazz music at City College, but I was also doing this other job at the same time. And for better or for worse, City College wasn't teaching me conducting skills. We were learning bebop scales and things like that, which was great foundation for my playing.
Yeah.
But I needed this other skill set just to get by, to do my job there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had to find a way to learn how to do it. You know.
So what happened next? Now you're moving more into New York City. Are you doing more work in the city?
Yes, I wound up working at a church right out of college on Long Island as a music director there. That was a crazy job. I had choirs and children's choirs and playing weddings and funerals and all this stuff. But after a couple of years, I was like, I got to do something else. And I had done this theater thing all the time, so I sent my resume around, and I got hired at a theater in Pennsylvania, and I worked there for a little while. And I came back to New York. I did what we call a workshop or a reading of a new musical that a friend of mine had written. I pretty strategically hired Broadway guys that I kind of sort of knew to be in the band. And they invited a music contractor to come. And music contractor, as you know, hires musicians and for other gigs. And this guy liked my playing and hired me to go on the road with the touring company of a Broadway show called Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. And that was my first like real professional union gig.
And you're on the road?
On the road, yeah. And then I did a show called High School Musical on the road. Which then led me to music supervise that show in Italy, where my family is from.
Yeah.
So that was incredible.
And what was that? What was music supervisor involved?
Yeah, so that's a tricky thing. People often ask, what's the difference? Like, there's a music director and a music supervisor. Yeah. We're actually trying to define that a little bit more within the Broadway community right now. A lot of music directors are trying to, we've been getting together talking about how to define it. Really, the music director is the conductor.
Okay.
And that's probably how we're going to maybe change the name, where the conductor is the person there conducting the show every night, maintaining the show, rehearsing with the understudies, etc. And the music supervisor is more of the creative role.
Interesting.
And more of the overseeing all the aspects. I music supervised the Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812 on Broadway, which starred Josh Groban. And that was such a big show that we had a wonderful music director, Or Matthias, but he had to conduct the show, and it was in the complete round, and we needed someone in the house to like make sure everything sounded right. We had a sound designer, of course, but he didn't know the orchestrations like I did, and so my job on that show was to do that and to hire the contractor, to hire the musicians, to hire the copyists, to work with the composer and the copyist to make sure the music's in order. And there's a lot that goes into these Broadway shows.
So you're wearing different hats.
Yes.
It comes down to.
Yep.
So, I mean, and my point is that that's a skill that has to be learned in the craziness about where our industry is right now. By wearing these different hats, that really adds tremendous value to you as a person, as a musician, and having all these skills.
For sure, yeah, yeah.
You're going on to now different shows. You're basing yourself more out of New York. Are you off the road now and coming back?
Yeah, so I made a conscious decision to not do any more touring.
Right.
Because as a wise person once told me, if you want to do tours, then do tours. If you want to do recording, stick to recording. If you want to do just Broadway. And I knew I wanted to like get into the Broadway world. At that point, that's where I was headed. So I subbed as a keyboard player. I found people who needed it. And that's a whole tricky world in of itself. Yeah. Finding friends, really, that will give you a chance to play. You could cold call people, but that only works so much.
Yeah,
But I had a couple opportunities to sub on different keyboard books, which led to conducting, sub-conducting on different shows, which then led to, John Miller, who hired me for my first official chair on Broadway, and then, which led to associate conducting work, and now music directing and arranging and orchestrating. So
that's fantastic. And John Miller, who I had the chance to sit down with for one of our interviews, again, is a great bass player.
Yeah.
Fantastic music contractor.
Yep. So
he pulls people together. He wears many hats in what he does.
Hats, yeah.
I mean, there's some really talented people that are in the Broadway scene.
Sure.
At many levels.
Yeah.
Many skill bases, which, as I'm starting to see with these interviews, is really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, John taught me something that I think was inherent in me, but he recognized and confirmed that this is what you need to do. He said, there are people who will say, well, that's not my job. Yeah. And then there are people who just do what's needed.
Yeah.
And then you become invaluable. You become someone that, he can do that. He'll do whatever we need him to do.
Yeah. That's a very important quality in today's time, because there are so many opportunities that come up. And if someone doesn't have the confidence to do it, and that's something which I think you have the confidence to go for it, and you believe in yourself. That's
for better or for worse.
Well, for sure, but that's a very important quality to at least get you involved to see how you can help out. And it seems like you're a fast learner, that when you finally get involved, you know how to tap dance to make it work.
Well, yeah, you mentioned the group that I work with called the Doo Wop Project.
Doo Wop, absolutely, great project.
We performed at a nightclub here in New York City, and a very famous Orchestral Pops conductor came to our show. And like one of these crazy stories, grabbed us after the show and said, I want a meeting with you guys. And the next day we met with him, and he said, I'm going to build you a symphonic show. Your show, just like it is, we're going to build orchestrations and everything. And then you're going to travel everywhere that I go. You're going to come along with me. And that came true. I mean, I thought it was like, is this real? But I said, well, this is an opportunity to learn how to orchestrate for a 60-piece orchestra. And one summer, a few years back, just took the whole summer off and locked myself in a room with orchestration books and learned how to do it. I was terrified on the first day of rehearsal, like, I think it's going to sound okay, but it's scary to write for, a 60-piece ensemble. But it worked out, because I learned how to do it somehow.
Well, tell me about the Doo Wop group, because I had the chance of hearing you guys perform, which I thought was fantastic. But I also know Joe Bergamini as a drummer.
Yeah.
Fantastic player. Through Joe, I've been able to hear about these symphonic dates that you're doing, which are absolutely amazing. So tell me about the Doo Wop group, and then talk about these symphonic performances.
I met one of the singers who is one of the founding members of the Doo Wop Project, doing another side hustle gig, which is on matinee days before matinee. Groups of kids will come in from Peoria, Illinois, or wherever, and they'll meet a Broadway performer from whatever show they're going to see that day, and we'll teach them a song and a dance, and then they'll go see that person. It's an incredible thing, yeah. And this singer and I wound up doing a lot of these together. He was in Jersey Boys, and when he left Jersey Boys, he wanted to do something else, and that guy was Dominic Nolfi, but Dominic Scaglione, who I think you've met as well.
We have interviewed him. Great story.
he was just a lover of doo-wop music. His father loved doo-wop music, and so he had the idea and told Dominic Nolfi we need to start a doo-wop group. Then they needed a music director, so Dominic Nolfi approached me because we knew each other from these classes, and he said, "Do you have any interest or experience in doo-wop music?" And as I said, my uncle was in this groove, and you know, I mean, that was my uncle's oldies band, is what we always called it, and so I grew up with this music, but it wasn't like I aspired to, you know, be Herbie Hancock, you know, not play 50s
That's
rock and roll.
a big difference from where it is.
Totally,
but the music is powerful on both sides,
so grateful for them to bring me into the group, because, you know, now I love the music. We started out with 5 songs. We learned 5 songs, and we did a presentation here in New York, and we booked 5 gigs that first year. And so then we needed to learn 15 more songs and put together a show, and it worked. It was pretty good. And then the next year we had 10 gigs, and then we're in our 6th year, and we just did 100 gigs last year, all over the country, including work with almost all the major symphony orchestras.
And Joe Bergamini had told me that, you know, with the symphony, just describe that. You know, you've got the symphony behind you. This is huge.
It's crazy, yeah. And we're so used to, again, 100 gigs. We're like a locked-in machine. We travel with a 5-piece band, and then there are 5 singers. Right. But when you add a whole orchestra and the strings, and they play late, or, you know, their instruments just sound late. So it's like this big amoeba that we're like trying to like pull along with us, and it's important for Joe Bergamini and I, along with the conductor, to feel all that, feel where the singers are, feel, you know, the time isn't necessarily right. It's tricky. It's very tricky. You know, when the conductor puts his baton down, you know, we want to go bop, but it's really bop is where the rest of the orchestra sounds. So you have to anticipate that. And it's a skill that we're still learning. So.
But that skill, which is interesting, that skill comes from doing it. So you have to have the confidence to go out there and just do it, which is what I admire what you guys are doing. You're not afraid to go out there and do it and learn on-the-job training.
On-the-job training, yeah. Because these conductors are very powerful people, and they know exactly where they want it. And, you know, if you beat them to the beat or something, you know, they'll give you a look, you know. So you do that a few times, and you realize, oh, I have to really listen. It's you know, music is so much about listening, but in that huge ensemble, it's so important.
It's listening, as I say, with Dumbo ears.
Yes.
Real large elephant ears to hear. Organizing all this here takes certain business skills. How do you organize all this, Sonny, with what you're doing? It's
one of the trickiest things, and I say music majors in college should be forced to be business minors. It's so important, because the day you graduate college, you are now Sonny Palladino, Inc.
Yeah.
And you may or may not have any business skills. My DJ business early on, like I always had an entrepreneurial spirit, so I kind of always liked the business side of things, but it's been tricky and a learning lesson every day. Working with the Doo Wop Project, all of a sudden now we're a big business, and there is no manual to tell you how to run it. And we make mistakes all the time, and we get advice, and we now hire people, bookkeepers and accountants and managers and all this stuff. But you never stop managing your business affairs. And again, we're always learning and trying to figure out how to save money. I think musicians, because we get paid often for the night, and sometimes we get paid very well for the gig, right? And you go, oh, $700. I'm rich tonight, you know. But you have to say that
tonight, right?
Right. That may be all you made that week. So then that's only $100 today. So spend wisely. I wish there were more resources for musicians on the business side. I mean, there are, but like, you know, an 18-year-old kid in college is not thinking about that. They're thinking about learning their instrument, which is like 1/2 of what you need to succeed as a musician, I think.
Absolutely, and you know that the artistic side, which is learning your craft, that's one journey. The business side, which is knowing how to monetize that so you can make some money out of it to have a living at what you're doing. And in that business side, the CEO is you.
That's it, yeah.
And if you're not making money, your CEO stinks. That's really what it comes to. So you got to go reevaluate that. But there are books that people can research. There are business books. There are marketing books. There's tons of material out there that we have to do on our own.
You have to do it on your own, yeah.
To learn that skill base. But there's also another side of the personal side. You know, we have to kind of balance a life inside that artistic intensity and inside that business intensity. How do you balance that in your life?
When I was 17, I saw Herbie Hancock perform on Long Island in Huntington, and I waited for him after the show. And, you know, I said something like, you know, I'm an aspiring young jazz pianist. Do you have any advice for me? You know, I'm sure he gets questions like that a lot. And he didn't say, like, practice. He said, man, you got to get your life together because you have to have a story to tell in your music. No one's going to care otherwise. And that's so important. And it really stuck with me. And, you know, and then I went to Berkeley and I saw cats in their practice room. Like, I'd go to breakfast and there'd be a guy in there and, you know, 15 hours later, he's still in there. And that's important. Yeah. But it's also important to get out and experience things and experience all the different things. You know, we get so stuck on perfecting our craft, but going out and experiencing life is just as important, I think.
Absolutely. And well said. And Herbie's advice is absolutely the deepest advice. It is, because if you have a life and relationships and you have love in your life, that's going to give you the emotion to put into your music.
Which is what you're looking for.
That's what you're looking for. And if it's in your music and then you're making some money from that, that's the trilogy of those three working, that artistic, business, and personal side. That's really an amazing part. But it seems like you're balancing all that pretty well.
Trying.
Yeah, well, we're all always trying.
Yeah, yeah.
But you're making it work now, Sonny. You're young and you're making it happening. And with the Doo Wop Project, it's fantastic to see that that's going on while you're balancing this Broadway thing, while you're balancing this individual, you know, piano artistic skill that you have. That's a lot that you're juggling.
Yeah, yeah. We talk about it as a group because there are 6 of us in the group plus the band. From day one, it's been with the Doo Wop Project understood and that we would be doing other things. That if you wanted to be in a Broadway show as one of the singers, we would get someone else to replace you for that period of time. Yeah. Your place will always be here, and that's been trying on us, and it's like a lot of extra work.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's allowed us to be more passionate for the project somehow, because it's not like the only thing we do. Bands have such a hard time. I mean, you know, I'm sure you've talked to plenty of people, and we have our own struggles with personalities and things because we're on the road together. It is what it is. But when we're able to go away and do something else for a period of time and then come back to it, it's totally refreshing and fun again. And so it's been this balance, but it's been a great balance. You know, I just worked on 2 shows here in New York, and then they both closed very quickly. And as they sometimes do, there's no rhyme or reason for whether or not a show will stay open. Yeah. And then I went right back to the Doo Wop Project. So it's been a huge blessing to have that. You know.
It's amazing because that means that you are secure enough in your contacts. People know who you are. I heard Getting the Band back together.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic show.
Thank you.
Fantastic show. I wish that didn't close. because it really had a great message.
Yes.
It was hysterically funny. The music was great. You guys did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
But you had the balance of people know who you are and what you're able to do. And here you are right back into the Doo Wop band, which is fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. As a musician, whatever your instrument or whatever side of this business, you're constantly, people call it hustling or whatever, but you have to have as many irons and as many fires as you can at all times. The week that we opened getting the band back together on Broadway, I was completely exhausted. I started a workshop of a brand new musical that same week because you don't know what's going to happen.
That's how it works. Yeah, that's how the business works. But again, you made it work. So you're learning the skills, as we all do, in maintaining a way of making an income. You know, that hustling, it's actually a good word, because that's really where all the great artists and great musicians are still hustling.
Sure, yeah.
Paul McCartney's still hustling.
Yeah.
He still wants to, play his music and deliver this to people. So it's always going to be that way in our life, because we happen to be artists in what we do.
Totally.
But you're doing great with it. We have a lot of these young musicians that are watching this, and they dream of being involved with music, they dream of being on Broadway. In closing, what would you say to these young musicians? Advice that could give them maybe some tools for them to pursue their dream?
Alongside hustling is you'll hear the word networking for the rest of your life as a musician, and it's an important skill. And what does that word mean? It's a loaded word, and it kind of almost sounds icky or whatever. For me, it's always been just becoming friends with people. Musicians, maybe people that aren't involved exactly in what you're doing, whatever, just meet people. We all know how to meet people in all the little subgenres. There's, here in New York, there's the jazz scene, hang out at the jazz clubs and meet the cats, or the indie rock scene at Rockwood Music Hall or in Brooklyn. You hang out there long enough, you're going to meet the people. Yeah, and Broadway, obviously, we know where that is, and you can go meet the people. But you can't come out and ask for a gig or anything. Just genuinely become friends with people that you have similar interests with, and then just be nice. That's such an important thing. People want to work with nice people. That ultimately, our band for the Doo Wop Project, we're going to travel. It's going to be tiring. We're going to spend 6 hours together in a car and 5 in a plane and think. We want to be with people that we want to hang out with. Meeting people and being nice is an important skill, I think, that I don't know is often talked about as much as it should.
Well, I'll tell you, you do that very well. Oh. You're a great guy, you're a great musician, you're a great hang, you're polite, you're on time, you have all these qualities that you have built into your persona, which I think is a main reason why you're successful at this point. And I'll tell you something, you're doing a great, great job. So on behalf of the sessions, Sonny, we thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
You did great.
Thanks, man.